welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. By the way, you can follow the show on Facebook at Viewpoint with Father John. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing a false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And this portion of the show is brought to you by Draper & Kramer Mortgage Corporation, a name you've trusted for over 100 years. If you're looking to refinance or purchase a home, contact my friend Ernie Gonzalez at 888-284-8332. Again, that's 888-284-8332, or online at mortgagesbyernie.com. Tell them Father John sent you. Draper & Kramer Mortgage Corporation, NMLS 2551, is licensed by the Department of Business Oversight under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act. Ernie Gonzalez, NMLS 1086147, an equal house lender. And tell Ernie I really did say hi. He's a good man. I've known him for a long time. He is someone you can trust. A couple of events coming up. Next Thursday at 6 p.m., I will be celebrating the candlelight service at Mountain View Mortuary and Cemetery in San Bernardino. Come on down. And if this week you take a photo of your loved one, they will include it in the slideshow. I'd love to see you there. We're going to come and celebrate some lives that we've had go into the next world between the last 2 years. And I'd love to have you come up and say hello and spend a little time together. And then after that, tune into your radio because we will be doing the show at 8 o'clock as usual. And yes, I will be flying down the freeway to get here on time. That does not count for any highway patrol who happen to listen to this. Don't ticket the priest. It's not good for your eternal rest. Also, if you missed that get-together, on Sunday, December 9th at 2 p.m., I'll be celebrating the candlelight service at Harbor Lawn Mortuary and Cemetery in Huntington Beach. Come on down, but it is BYSB, bring your own surfboard. And so but surf at the beach, not the cemetery. Anyhow, so I hope to see you at one of these two places. It's going to be really a nice, respectful, and loving time where we can honor people that we love, that we miss. And as we go into this holy season of Advent, I know it brings up a lot of memories, and maybe we can share some of them together. I'm very excited that tonight my guest is an award-winning artist and teacher, my good friend Elizabeth Preston. And I got to be in one of her workshops yesterday, a journaling workshop, and it was really a fabulous experience. I love when I learn new things, and I got in touch with a couple of things yesterday at the workshop, and she's just masterful at what she does. And so it's my true honor to introduce her. Elizabeth, say hello to everybody.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here, John. What a privilege.
It's good to have you back again. And we're talking a little bit about the holiday seasons can either be a blissful time or a stressful time. And one of the things that's really important, and you and I have talked about this, that Christmas is a time, and I know that Christmas is right after Advent, but not everybody knows the Advent thing, so we're going to talk a little bit about Christmas for just a second, where we always talk about the Nativity. Well, there's another Christmas experience, and that's when you experience the birthing of Christ in your heart. Now, were you calling it the Jesus Christ, the Buddha Christ, the Krishna Christ, the Christ Spirit, the Word from which made the universe, which is bigger than any church and bigger than any denomination or religion. It is that which is that, and the very essence and core of our true being when we find our true self. And that could be a challenge to find sometimes. And one of the things that Elizabeth does so well with her journaling is to help you get in touch with that true self that's there. So let's talk a little bit about what you do.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, John, because there are two components to what I do. One is that I was trained by Lucia Capacchione, who is a pioneer in art therapy and she developed the creative journaling process. In order to be a facilitator, I had to agree to do a year of introspective self-examination, and I also had to be supervised and learn how to give workshops, because people trust me with very sensitive information.
Yes.
A lot of the people who come to the workshops, the other part of it is, in addition to creative journaling and Lucia Capacchione, the other piece of it is that Pomona Valley Hospital Medical Center has allowed me for the last 15 years to provide support group twice a month. It's free to the public. It's a community service. And consequently, I work with people with all kinds of conditions. It may be a cancer journey.
Yes.
It may be through the Stead Heart Center, where people are recuperating from a stroke or perhaps a heart attack. And so consequently, I also work with people with brain trauma and
yes.
depression. And all of these different conditions are helped through the creative journaling process in a really wonderful, meaningful way. So I'm very grateful to be able to do that.
Is it also helpful with chronic pain?
That's a really great question, because we do, our whole premise is based on body, mind, and spirit, and the
Okay.
unity of body, mind, and spirit. And so we work with people with fibromyalgia. We work with people who experience arthritis and chronic pain. And so the creative journaling process, I'm reminded of the pianist Horowitz.
Yes.
Horowitz would be terribly crippled with arthritis to the extent that his hands were crumpled up like this.
Right.
And yet his audience would see him go seat himself at the piano bench. And before you knew it, all of that pain was gone, and he pleased hundreds of thousands of people with his piano.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And that's the way the mind can overtake the pain.
Sure. And speaking of pain, not all pain is physical. Some of it is emotional. You mentioned the depression. And particularly during this time of year, people who have loved ones that may be either on palliative care or hospice. What I witnessed yesterday in your workshop, I think it would lend itself greatly to the caregivers who are trying to deal with their anticipatory grief going into that. Do you feel that this would also be good for that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do grief work, and sometimes a church or some other organization will ask me to come in. The one that I remember so well is there were 8 people who were trying to overcome collectively 24 deaths.
Wow.
Among those 8 people. And part of what happened out of that workshop, I work with a lot of different avenues of expressive arts. It might be clay, it might be creating a collage, it might be music.
Sure.
But in that particular one that I did with the people trying to overcome the 24 deaths, I'll never forget, because we did a collage. And a woman came and said, up to this point in time, I have no longer wanted to live. But through the images in the collage, I'm going to take my daughter on a cruise, and we're going to start living life again. Nice. That's the power of what we're able to do with creative journaling.
That's important stuff. I really enjoyed the part yesterday where you talked about getting into the different hemispheres of the brain.
Yes.
And of course, in my counseling training, I've been trained about brain relationship as well. But you covered it in a really great way yesterday, and about how the left and right functions, and how we have to get out of our dominant side of the brain to release some of those secrets within us that we never made friends with, if I heard you correctly.
That's
so
true.
We can make friends with that.
Well, the interesting thing about it is I have a friend who is not really willing to come to the workshop because she's a professor who teaches journaling. However, there's a running joke between us because as long as you're continuing to journal with your dominant hand, that means you're stuck in the left side of your brain. And when you're stuck in the left side of your brain, you're not able to access those beautiful parts that the right side of the brain could provide, such as feelings,
Right.
such as dreaming, such as creativity on a much higher level.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the real beauty of creative journaling, because I don't know about you, but I want to be whole-brained.
Yes. Well, it reminds me of something that Thich Nhat Hanh talks about, one of his stories about a Christian missionary who came to the East and wanted to learn about Buddhism.
Yes.
And so the Buddhist master is pouring a cup of tea while the missionaries tell him everything he knows, and particularly about Buddhism. He continues to pour the tea after the cup is full and is overflowing until finally the missionary says, "It's full, no more will go in." He says, "Just like your brain. You know so much, I cannot put any more into it until you empty it out first." And it sounds like your dear friend, the professor, we need to empty out a little bit, and that's not an insult. It's just a realization, because sometimes after we get our degrees, we forget there's so much more to learn. I mean, my first year after having my doctorate, you could ask me anything. I knew what it was. And, all these years later, I'll say, I don't know, why don't we go look that up? We'll find out together, because some of the tea's been emptied out.
I think that's part of it. I think the words "I don't know"
Right.
are sometimes the most difficult for an educated person to learn and to use.
Yes.
Because, we're schooled and it's very humbling, but I think humility is a very attractive characteristic. And so sometimes saying "I don't know" is the best answer.
Mother Angelica said to somebody, now I have to tell you, she has a sharp tongue sometimes, but she had a cousin who was very well educated, and she finally got frustrated and said, "You're obviously educated way beyond your intelligence." and, only a nun could say that and get away with it,
Well, you did bring up one aspect with the story about the teacup being filled over. And this whole essence, one of the things that I had hoped we would talk about tonight is, how do we become a good listener? So many things around all of us right now are challenging our peace of mind.
Yes.
We have people who, for the first time in their lives, are homeless.
Yes.
We have people who not only are homeless, but we have people who have lost loved ones at a rate in California that we've not known before.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I'd hoped we might talk about tonight is, how can I become a comforting listener? John, it took me years to learn that when someone came to me with a difficulty or a problem, it was not my job to join them in their emotional pain.
Sure.
And it was not my job to fix them.
Right.
And I didn't learn that lesson for a long time. But very often when people come to me, what they really want is a compassionate listener.
Absolutely. And speaking about compassionately listening, we're coming up to our first commercial break. And when we come back from this commercial, we are going to talk a little bit more about the ability to listen. My guest tonight is Elizabeth Preston, and we'll be back in 2 and 2. And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM. We're on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. That was a Midwestern accent right there. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I'm your host, Father John Reed. Nick's giving me the funny eye over that one. I'm sorry, guys. And also, this is also a listener-supported program. So if you go to www.viewpointwithfatherjohn.com, click on the support button, and you can help keep us on the air. And talking about keeping us on the air, part of this program is being brought to you tonight by the Draper and Kramer Mortgage Corporation, the name you've trusted for over 100 years. If you're looking to refinance or purchase a home, contact my friend Ernie Cazales at 888-284-8332. Again, that's 888-824-8332. Or online with mortgagesbyernie.com. Tell them Father John sent you. Draper and Kramer Mortgage Corporation, NMLS 2551, is licensed by the Department of Business Oversight under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act. Ernie Cazales, NMLS 1086147, an equal housing lender. Do tell him I said hello. He's a good man. And I want to give a shout out. A lot of you know that when here in Redlands, they closed Tony's Spunky Steer, I almost went into depression. I love that restaurant. Well, guess what, boys and girls? They still have the one in Chino open. And Gabby and I ate there last night. And our buddy Tino is working there. They sent him from Redlands to Chino. And the food is really good there. But most of all, seeing our friend Tino is really nice. He's just a great guy. And so, Tino, if you're listening, good job. And thanks for the extra appetizer. It was really good. I'm feeling really gordo from it. So, those are some of the important things. Now we're going to get back to the show.
There you go.
And when we went to commercial, we just started talking about learning how to be a good listener. And I can remember as a young seminarian, one of the most difficult things to teach members of the clergy is how to listen. Mm-hmm. And not be thinking about what you're going to say next. Not thinking about, well, what scripture would go good with that. People want to be heard, not talked at. So how do you learn to listen and not try to take on the role of fixer, but just listener? How do you handle that?
John, I feel like there have been times when I haven't really been able to have a vehicle that I could use to teach that to people. And I discovered one the other day. Oprah Magazine carries articles by Martha Beck.
Yes.
And I follow her teachings and so forth. And I think I found a way to explain what, for me, has been a great way to explain how to be a comforting listener.
Good. 3
simple words. Be like water. Well, how can I be like water? Well, water is fluid.
Right.
So that means that if you come to me with a problem, then if I'm a good listener, I'm going to try to get behind your eyes. I'm going to try to come up alongside you and feel your pain, not to try to fix your pain and not to so emotionally engage that, I just make you sadder.
So the difference between empathy and sympathy.
Exactly, because sympathy doesn't really help.
Right.
Because we're so invested, then you're going to feel like, oh, I shouldn't have upset her. And so instead, if I come up alongside you and I'm quiet, and that's the second part of water, and that is be still. Be still in... And it's important to give eye contact. It's important maybe to reach out and touch someone. It's important to let them know that you're doing your very best to be present. I once had a client who came to me, and she did me a really good service because I meet with people privately often as well as with groups. And one day, about 10 minutes into the session, she said, I think I need to leave now. And I said, oh, really? She said, yes, I can sense you're very scattered. Your mind's all over the place. You're not really being present with me.
Wow.
And instead of getting offended, I thanked her.
Sure.
And from that time on, when I meet with somebody, I ask myself that question. Am I ready to be present with somebody? And the third part of being like water is reflection. Well, if you bring me a problem and I can see the pain in your eye, then the best response I can give you is, it looks like you're in a lot of pain. I'm then reflecting. I'm not engaging with your pain. I'm
Right.
not trying to fix your pain. And I'm not trying to one-upman you.
Good.
I'm simply wanting to be a reflection of what the words are that you're telling me. And when somebody, if I'm in trouble, if somebody reflects back what they hear or they see, I know I'm being listened to.
Oh, those are great points. One of the things that I find very important as someone who does a lot of counseling, the reason I take a 10-minute break between each client is so I could be fresh with the next client and be listening to that client,
Yes.
not the one that just left. Because sometimes if there's not that break, this client's talking, but you're still hearing the other one.
You're not present.
You're not present. What we used to call active listening.
Yes.
And I could remember situations where someone would call into a crisis line and they would hang up and say to people, when I train people on the line, they say, yeah, but you never heard me.
Yes.
And when you call a crisis line, that could be pretty devastating.
Yes.
And so I agree with you 1,000% of the being present, be still. You said something else I want to revisit, and you said come alongside.
Yes.
I like that. Because otherwise, if you're in front or behind, you're not being present with them, if I'm hearing you correctly. But if you come alongside, you're sharing the space. Would that be a good analogy of that?
It's really a wonderful one, because I had the privilege of being a hospice worker
Good.
for 3 different people until they took their last breath. And it was a challenge because they were not able to talk to me a whole lot.
Right.
And my first knee-jerk reaction was, what should I say to them? How can I, comfort them with kind words or whatever? And what I learned out of that experience is really and truly all they wanted was my presence. They just wanted me to see them through that, whatever that condition was. They simply wanted me to be present, to allow them with my eyes, with my smile, to reassure them that I wasn't going to leave. I
Right.
wasn't in a hurry. There was nothing more important than just being beside them as they went through that transition.
Such an important point. I do a lot of retreats. And during the retreats, I do a lot of 15-minute one-on-ones with people. And I had one lady say something very striking to me. She'd been in therapy for a number of years, and she said to me afterwards, she says, in this 15 minutes I spent with you, I made more progress than I did the last 2 years with my therapist. I said, well, why would you say that? She says, because I felt like you heard me.
Yes.
You were listening. You were engaged. And I've never forgotten that. That was a number of years ago, and it drove home to me how important it is not to be looking for an answer for them, but to just be a good listener. And then if something needs to be said, it'll make itself obvious, I think. What's your experience with that?
That's a really good point, too, because I think sometimes, we're silent because we're afraid we're going to say the wrong thing,
Yes, that's true.
and that's not helpful.
Right.
And sometimes we're silent because we are so self-conscious. And it seems
Yes.
to me that when we can finally get to that place inside of ourselves that says, my only job here is to be of comfort and to be near you. And you know what? I had somebody ask, well, does that mean I shouldn't give advice? Well, it's interesting because often people will come to us specifically because they want advice.
Yes.
However, one of the techniques I use is if someone comes to me and it looks like they want to ask advice, I very clearly say, Are you asking, do you want to just vent, or do you want some advice?
Right.
And that way, I've given respect to them, and I've let them know I'm more than willing to share what you want me to, but I'm not going to be a pouncer. I'm not going to wait for you to be quiet so I can say something. I genuinely want to know, what do you want from me? And to me, that is adding comfort.
You know, the other thing that strikes me is when somebody, you go to them and they have a whole list of books you should read on the subject. And it's like, how do you know I really need those books? If you were really listening, you'd realize those books may not have anything to do with what I'm going through. It might be what you're going through, but not what I'm going through.
I'm having to laugh at that, John, because one of my older children, as she became an adult child, she came to me to share a problem.
Okay.
And I wasn't a good listener, but I learned a lesson about that very point, because she just, in anguish said, Mom, don't recommend one more book to me. And I haven't since then.
Right.
Because I have we don't really show each other. We all wear masks.
Sure.
And to me, the most wonderful thing is when I'm being such a good listener, you can take your mask off and be real.
Yes.
And I can be real with you.
Absolutely. I can remember years ago, I had gone to therapy, and I'm a big believer in therapy. I've been in different times.
Me too.
And this therapist did that very thing, gave me a list of books. And I thought, I didn't come to a library. I was trying to come to a therapist.
Yes.
And this is going to sound egotistical, but it's not meant that way. I'm pretty well read. You don't get a doctorate without becoming pretty well read.
Sure.
And what I really wanted was somebody who was going to listen to what was going on and be objective.
Yes.
And just let me know it's going to be okay. And not give me that list of books. So I truly get that.
Well, I think, too, what a lot of this boils down to is the concept of reassurance.
Yes.
With this whole concept of being like water. I think very often I love the 23rd Psalm.
Yes.
And it talks about wanting to go beside the still water and being in the green pasture. And I think very often when someone comes to us with a problem, what they really want is reassurance, a quiet sense that we are there for them and with them.
Yes.
And particularly now, I'm troubled by, as we approach these holidays, so many people in California have lost everything.
Yes, they have.
And I had a friend ask me the other day, well, how will I find these people? I don't think it's hard at all.
Okay.
I think if you are able to investigate valid organizations, whether it's a church or what other kind of an organization, it doesn't really take that much time to find how you can be of comfort.
Yes.
But I think it takes a little bit of legwork. Maybe
Sure.
it's as simple as calling a mental health clinic and saying, how can I be there for somebody through the holidays?
That's a wonderful idea. And I hope those listening really think about that for a little bit, because a friend of mine used to say that love is a divine paradox. When you go out to get, you come back empty. When you go out to give, you come back overflowing. Mm. And what a better time than the holiday season, whether it's Hanukkah, whether it's Christmas, whether it's Kwanzaa, it doesn't matter. Whatever your holy days are, to take that time and be of service so that you can be the hands of Spirit.
Yes.
Reaching out to touch others. And you can't reach out and bless other people without experiencing some of that blessing yourself. So I think that's a terrific idea. And churches are a good way to go. Red Cross is a good way to go. Salvation Army is a fabulous way to go.
Yes.
I think that's one of the best run organizations in the world, to be honest with you. And they always show up so quietly and do so much.
Yes.
So.
And I really feel that one of the most wonderful holidays I can remember was I myself was going through a major life change. And I think this is another aspect of it. I think often when we go through a major life change, like the loss of a home, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a marriage, one of the best things we can do is accept that our situation has changed radically.
Yes.
And then move forward to see what we can do for someone else.
Yes. Yes. And that really is important, to accept that things are different now. When I work with people with grief, that's one of the things I tell them is your life is not going to be the same.
Yes.
And I think it's a real mistake when, two things that people say to people that I think are real mistakes is, one, at some point life will get back to normal. Well, normal is 98.6. Okay. The other thing is, I know how you feel.
Oh.
And no, if you're saying either one of those, in my mind, you're really not listening. Instead, you're focused on trying to fix it because their grief brings up the fear in you of your grief. And so I'll give you a quick answer, and we can get off this grief thing real quick.
I think that's very true, and I think you bring up the issue of normalcy. And I had a really wonderful counselor once who said, Elizabeth, the most important thing you can embrace is the new normal.
Yes.
And I didn't really know what that meant for a while. But when we've gone through astounding life changes, that sense of acceptance and then saying, okay, what new normal do I need to embrace? And how can I find a new structure in my life that I can fit into, where I can still be of service to someone else, and in so doing, I can gain strength in who I am now today.
Outstanding. Well, speaking of normals, we're going to go to an old normal, which means we're going to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of learning how to journal from both dominant and non-dominant hands and why that is so important in self-discovery. Let's see you in 2 and 2. And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. Again, I want to remind you that you can follow this show on Facebook at Viewpoint with Father John. I want to give a shout out to the world's best board operator who is back from his anniversary with his lovely wife. And how you doing tonight, Nick?
I'm trying to stay warm.
Well,
it's very cold and rainy out there. I don't know if you've noticed.
Well, I noticed, but your hair fall off too.
Yeah,
maybe that's why you're cold.
I've been trying to look for my hair all day and I can't find it. I'm bald now. I don't know what. It's weird.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
it's not like I've been bald for 6 years.
Well, you know what? I have some leftover carpet if you want some.
What color is it?
It's orange shag, but it'll go with your eyes wonderfully when they're bloodshot.
Oh, I'll take it.
Okay.
If you can go your life with, I assume you were red at some point.
Yes.
Okay. Well, if you can do it, I can do it.
There you go. There you go. I was a shaggy dog. I remember when that movie came out. So, well, we missed you last week, and so I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. And
I hope you did as well. Thank you.
We did. And Gabby says, living with me every day is like Thanksgiving. I said, really? She says, yes. That's what I get for marrying a turkey. So shout out to the beautiful Gabby across the room here and the dignified husband of Elizabeth, Rob, who we all had a wonderful dinner together, had a great time. And they taught me the wonderful art of dine and dash, and I'm now a skilled dine and dasher. So, that couple, I really like surprising people, and I bet when they saw that second check on their table, they were really surprised. I'm just kidding, folks. Those of you who take that serious, it's a joke. My guest tonight is the award-winning artist and teacher Elizabeth Preston, and also a dear friend, someone who I love dearly and admire. And we're going to talk a little bit about something that she's more of an expert on than I am, that's for sure. And that's the importance of journaling with your dominant and non-dominant hand. Let's talk about that.
John, I had an experience in 1993 where I was in a very serious automobile accident,
Yes.
which led to my losing the use of my right arm for 2 years. And that was such a big thing for me to have to, a large challenge for me to have to get through, that I hired the services of an art therapist because I had to stop my teaching career right in the middle of it. One day I was teaching, the next day I wasn't, and I didn't for more than a year. And the art therapist taught me the process by Lucia Capacchione, who is a pioneer in art therapy, and she's the person who developed a process where instead of always journaling with your dominant hand, such as I'm a right-handed person,
Yes.
so if I sign for a credit card, then I sign with my right hand.
Yes.
But that keeps me stuck in the orderly, logical left side of my brain.
Yes.
Well, through the art therapist who helped me, what I learned is if I was able to ask questions with that dominant right hand, but then calm myself and allow my mind to kind of give me a response to the question,
Yes.
then what I would do is either write or print with my non-dominant hand. Then I was able to access poetry, which I wouldn't natively have been used for responses. I'm able to access the right side of my brain, which gives me an ability to feel things that I don't normally feel, or to gain insights that I might, because you see, what then I'm doing is I'm accessing both my intuitional right brain and my rational left brain.
Yes.
And so consequently through that process, and I think this is really important for the audience to hear, is that through that process, I am able to reduce stress. And I am able to help others learn how to reduce stress. For instance, at the Robert and Beverly Lewis Cancer Care Center, which is a division of Pomona Valley Hospital Medical Center, where do you find the strength and the peace of mind to get ready for your second brain tumor surgery?
Ooh.
That's a tough one.
Yes, that is.
Okay, and so when a person is facing that kind of a challenge, if they are able to use right and left hand dominance, they are able to have a wholeness that they can't access any other way. And so consequently, by journaling on a regular basis, and I recommend that people get into the habit of, number one, learning the process. If you're interested in learning it, Lucia wrote a book called The Power of the Other Hand, and another one is called The Creative Journal. And between those two alone, you'll learn the Jungian philosophy behind it. But more importantly, you will learn that with creative journaling, there are three components. There's an image, there's a dialogue, and there is a reflection. So if I draw an image with my non-dominant hand of perhaps that tumor, and then I dialogue with that tumor, and I'm able to become whole through being able to journal and reduce my stress, I'm able then to face any challenge with strength and dignity and grace.
Oh, I like that. Now, you do these workshops 2 Wednesdays a month, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, is that open to anybody?
Anyone. That's the beauty of what Pomona Valley Hospital offers, both for the Cancer Center and for the Stead Heart Center. anyone in the community. I have people who come from as far away as Huntington Beach. I have people who come from Yucaipa. And it doesn't matter who the health provider is. It doesn't matter who you are aligned with for your health services. We welcome everyone.
Now, is there a charge for that class?
None.
Okay.
And that's the hospital pays my consultancy fee. But beyond that, anyone and everyone is welcome. It's free to the public. You don't even have to call and say, "Can I come?" You just come. And it's the second and fourth Wednesdays of every month at the Robert and Beverly Lewis Cancer Care Center in the professional library. And it's free.
And it's a beautiful setting. And that's at 9:30, correct?
9:30 to 11 in the professional library.
I went to this workshop yesterday, ladies and gentlemen. I have to tell you, I was truly impressed. I actually did some of the non-dominant hand writing and was really surprised at what came up through it. It's something I'm going to practice more of. And, I knew some of the history a little bit behind it because we got a little bit in school, but to actually experience it is a whole different thing. And I can tell you from sitting in her class that she has a wonderful way of walking you through it so that you understand what you're doing at a very at ease level. It's not like you feel like you're taking a test. It feels more like it's a safe environment where you can really relax and explore and make some discoveries. And so I really enjoyed that yesterday.
I'm so glad you did, John, because one of the other things that's very exciting about this process is we have practitioners who, like myself, went through the training.
Right.
All over the world. All over the world. And not only that, but we are now bringing this process into schools where young people can learn this process in such a way that they, particularly I've worked over the years with ADD, ADHD, people who are on the autism spectrum.
I was going to ask about that.
And people who suffer with fibromyalgia. There are really no conditions that aren't able to benefit from it. And we now have this in oncology hospitals across the country and in schools across the country. We did, Texas A&M did a research project in Texas with school children because a lot of people said, well, this is fine, but is it all anecdotal? In other words, can it be research-based? Well, guess what? A&M did a research and found that there is a real reason that the brain is able to calm and help us with the essence of our lives.
Outstanding. While you're talking about that, I was thinking that this would be a wonderful tool for two particular elements. One is Asperger's.
Yes.
Particularly with the difficulty of reading people.
Yes.
So getting to another part of the mind away from the logical part. And the other, people like me, dyslexics. I know that that's been a struggle my entire academic career. And I think getting into both hemispheres of the brain is very helpful in that area. And I would really love to see some research with those two particular populations, one for selfish reasons as a dyslexic, but the other because I've worked with some people I care about dearly who have Asperger's, and I, with what I experienced yesterday and what I've watched you do, I think there may really be something there that should be pursued, but that's just one man's opinion.
Well, I think it's a great opinion for this reason, John, because as I mentioned, the three components are an image, a dialogue, and a reflection. Mm-hmm. Well, if we struggle with dyslexia, and consequently was, is, saw, and so forth, and that's all twisted around, when we are able to take our non-dominant hand and draw an image,
yes,
and then work with that image, then what happens is we are able to find a part of ourselves that restores self-esteem, because we're friends, but we haven't gotten to talk a whole lot about your childhood.
Right.
But I am so bothered by the fact that there are so many young people who are being schooled in a left-brained environment.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
And maybe they are creatives who don't feel like they belong. And this process allows them a process which raises their self-esteem and gives them a sense of higher worth. And also, hey, they feel like they have a sense of humor, they're smart, and maybe they do fit into this world.
Would that be compatible with Montessori schooling?
Probably. That's a good question. Probably from one aspect, and that is one of my survivors in the cancer group has been a survivor now for 8 years. And one of my treasured possessions is a canvas that she gave to me, and on it says, "Art saves lives."
I like
And
that.
so Montessori encourages the artistic component. We must never underestimate. I mean, art has been taken out of schools.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
not being, it's not being fostered at the level it could or should be. And this allows us to explore expressive arts of all kinds: clay, collage, music, all of the above, and
Yes.
gives us a new way to express ourselves.
I think that's very important. And for those of you listening, I think it's worth writing letters to your people in legislative positions to let them know these are important parts of education. We're only giving half education. We're not making the whole connection for these students. We're coming up to our last minute and a half, and so my guest tonight has been my dear friend, Elizabeth Preston, award-winning artist, and I've seen some of your artwork. I've been to your studio. It's beautiful stuff. I really like it. And she's also a teacher, and she teaches journaling. I would really recommend that you go visit her at Pomona Valley Hospital on the 2nd and 4th
Yes.
Wednesdays of the month. And my memory is good. It's just short. So, and again, next week at 6 o'clock, I will be at Mountain View Cemetery and Mortuary at 6 o'clock. We'll be doing the candlelight service. There will be some hot cocoa, some coffee, and some cookies. More than anything, there'll be fellowship. Come and be with people who are also walking down this path, so you don't have to walk down the path alone. And if you miss that gathering, on the 9th, I'll be at Harbor Lawn in Huntington Beach at 2 o'clock. That's a Sunday afternoon. Come spend some time with us. There's no reason to walk through this season alone if you are going through grief. And if you're looking for a good gift for family members and people you love, I always recommend my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me. You can get it at Amazon.
It's a wonderful book.
And you'll help keep us on the air by getting that as well. Well, you spent another hour with us on Viewpoint with Father John. If no one told you this week that they love you, let me be the first. And thank you for tuning in tonight. We'll talk to you next week. God bless.